I thought it might be time to finally bring back out Quaker diamonds for a bit of attention. I have not touched this piece since one of the first few episodes of my channel. So almost 2 years ago, 2 summers ago was the last time I put any work into this. And I finished this motif here, and then I put it away. So Quaker diamonds, Rosewood Manor. And I thought I would, before I put it in the Q-snap, I thought I would show you my starting point, because I'm going to put this in 11-inch square Q-snaps, and I'm going to be working on that section there, which is going to look like that. So let me just go pop this into a Q-snap and onto the Lowry frame. I'll be stitching downstairs today, and I'll be right back. Okay, ready to go. As is sometimes the case with things that I'm working on that are quite old and people really like them, this is one of those unfortunate cases where the threads that I'm using for this design are no longer available. I am using a conversion that was done by Vicki Clayton Silks way back. I don't even remember how long ago it was that I purchased these threads, this pattern, and started this. I know for a fact the last time I touched it was 2 years ago. I think I might have already said that. It's been at least an hour since I filmed that little clip before I finally managed to sit down to record the rest of this Stitch With Me video. So yes, the pattern calls for Valdani threads, which you may remember from Monday's video. I've just purchased my very first Valdani threads from Stitch It Central here in London, Ontario. And I had some great comments from people who have used Valdani threads about how to handle the fact that I think they fray a little bit easily. More than one person suggested using a thread conditioner on them, like Thread Heaven, or you know, what's the Thread Magic? Is that the one? I know Thread Heaven is no longer available, but or beeswax or something like that. Using some thread conditioner actually really helps them apparently behave. So I know that when I start mine, I will make sure I use those. So again, this pattern calls for Valdani threads. As you can see from the picture, the colors are glorious. So I don't think you can go wrong going with called for threads that Karen herself has recommended. You know, for a designer to keep using the same threads in her patterns, she's got to be a fan. So anyways, there you go. But I am using a conversion done by Vicki Clayton way back when. And so I've got all of my silks. I have them all in individual floss away bags. I've got the names written on the, fortunately for me, I have the names all written down. And the 3 colors that I keep these in a smaller bag, though I'm thinking that I may upgrade to a bigger bag and put the fabric in it as well. I'm not, you know, Q-snaps have their place, and I know lots of people really like them. Not always a huge Q-snap fan for fabrics that are bigger than the size of the Q-snap, which of course this is, because having all of that extra fabric wadded up around the sides and the bottom, I don't really like it. I'm not a huge fan. However, I think that as a stitcher who has so many projects on the go, Q-snaps are an affordable way for me to not be a monogamous stitcher and not have everything on scroll rods, because those get pricey fast, and they're too annoying to, you know, unsew them or, you know, take them off the scroll rods to replace every time with each project. Q-snaps make it very simple to switch in and out between projects. So the 3 colors I'm using here, I'm not going to bother with this little green guy here. I'll come back in after and fill those in. But I've got Old Maid of the Sea, this lovely blue, and Cerveza is the sort of mustard color there, mustard amber. It's a beautiful color. And then OMG red, which is this this color that you see there. So those are the threads that I'm using. And I've just realized that my needle is, I thought I had a needle minder here with a needle. Hang on a sec. Just gonna, I'll be right back. I need a needle. Can't start without a needle. There we go. Back in business. Okay, so the reason I chose mainly to work on this piece today was a comment and question I had a few weeks back now from Meowser Mommy on the YouTube comments, and she was wondering about working with silk and if I had any tips or tricks or how I managed things with working with silk and things like that. So I didn't answer the question last week, but sorry, on the Monday video, but I said that perhaps on Friday I would choose a project that used silks and discuss it then. So basically, in a nutshell, working with silks is really no different than working with cottons. I mean, it feels a little different. There are a couple of other things that, you know, possibly you might want to watch out for, but really, in a nutshell, it's exactly the same. It's just a little bit more of a luxury fiber. So the way that these ones came, when I purchased them, they came on a spool. Silk comes... do any other silk manufacturers use these? I'm not aware. I know Dinky Dyes, they come in a skein. Silks for You obviously come in those enormous hanks. What else? It's escaping me at the moment. I have a rather large stash of old Vicki Clayton silks because my local needlework shop here in town, way back in the day, sold a lot of it, and it was an inexpensive, really good quality silk, and I kitted up a lot of projects, you know, 5 to 10 years ago with these silks. So that's why when I bring them out and everybody says, "Oh, that's really nice," and I say, "I know, I'm really sorry you can't get it," you know, it's unfortunate. However, I can't not work on the things that are in my stash pile. I can only, you know, apologize and offer alternatives. And really, I don't think you can go wrong with the color that you see there in the Valdani threads. And if you want to do a conversion yourself to Dinky Dyes, I really love Dinky Dye silks. I think that they're a great product as well. So, you know, when you're dealing with silk, this is a 6-ply, just like DMC. It's exactly the same as DMC. So I cut my length. I cut about the same length as I would a DMC. I don't worry about, you know, longer lengths fraying or things like that. Silk is a high quality product. And again, just like a cotton thread, I would take 2 strands from my 6-strand of silk the exact same way that I would from cotton. However, the one thing I would not do with silk ever that I do with cotton is I would never double it up on itself. I wouldn't trap my needle in the middle, as I am so fond of doing for all of the projects that I use 2 strands of DMC on. With silk thread, I just wouldn't do it. 2 strands, take them out individually, line them back up. Now you can check to see whether your fiber is going the right way by running your fingers down it, but I've never been really good at seeing it. You can kind of see if you run your fingers, sorry, my huge fingers right in your face there. If you run your fingers along the thread, the fibers will stand up more in one direction than going the other. And so you want to stitch in the direction that the fibers are lying down, so that as you pull the thread through the fabric, it's not pulling against those fibers. It's working with the grain of the thread, if that makes sense. And other than that, you know, silk does tend to catch on your cuticles a little bit more than cotton does. And as you can see, I am not the type of woman who gets regular manicures. And as someone who records fairly regular Stitch With Me videos, well, if you're still here, then clearly you don't maybe mind so much that I don't always have manicured fingernails. Which, hey, thanks. Because I guess I'd rather be stitching. I don't have a lot of time, so I would rather be stitching than sitting in a chair or even doing it myself. Too many other things to do. All right, so I'm going to finish off, and you'll notice I'm not wearing the brown glove today, which was just my reminder, actually, that I fully intended today to just stitch with my right hand. I've gone back to work, cutting and sewing for Evertote, and so I'm trying to take things as I'm easing myself into it. So I made myself a promise that when I started back, I would just stitch one-handed for a while, just to only be using that hand for work, for crafting, and then as soon as it's feeling better, then I'll be back to two-handed stitching. So, or, you know, wearing the glove, two-handed stitching as well. But even that I'm going to avoid doing for the next week or so. My father-in-law thinks, he's a retired GP. He actually thinks I tore a muscle. He doesn't think it's tendonitis at all. He thinks I tore a muscle in it. And I think I tend to agree. Now, you're going to hear some noise behind me, and maybe in a minute you're going to see someone come in the camera screen, because my retriever, Daria, just heard me talking. She's mostly deaf, but I'm not a quiet talker, and she can see me, and she's wagging her tail like crazy behind me, so she might come down and sit in front of me in just a minute. All right. So there, that was easy. Those 4 are done. So let's sew in the thread. Here she comes. Here she comes. Hello. Did you come for a visit? Hello. You're a good girl. All right. Oops. And I've already got a little... I always try to take care of knots right away. Not leave them in there. There we go. All right. Now, I think, yes, hello. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're a good girl. She's not used to me talking to myself while I'm stitching down here. This is very unusual for her. All right, so I am going to attach my thread where I know I am headed, and then we'll get in there. She's currently softening up the carpet to find another nap spot. So you might hear her scratching around. Yep, there she goes. Don't mind how shaggy she is. She my old girl, she needs a good brush and a groom, but it's tough because she can't stand for longer than about 2 minutes. And she's got some lumps and bumps that don't do well with vigorous brushing. Anyways, okay, so moving on, let me find out where I need to bring my needle up. So, okay, so these 2 corners here need to have matching squares. There we go. All right, so I hope I answered your question about silk floss, silk thread. if you're considering trying it, splurging a little bit on some silk, go for it. Don't be afraid of it. It is obviously a little pricier than cotton. I think we all know that. But if it's in your budget and you've always wanted to try it, there's really nothing to be nervous about. It's just like stitching with regular floss. It does tend to, I never use a thread conditioner on it. I don't think it's necessary, but that's my preference. It really tends to just glide through the fabric beautifully. So there are two things from comments and questions that stick out in my mind. We're going back a couple of weeks now for comments and questions on the videos, and I'm going to apologize right here if I've missed your comment or question and it's still something that you have a burning desire to find out. Please leave me another comment or question on this video below, and I'll make sure that I include it next Friday. It takes me quite a while to go through all the comments and questions, and I do read them. You know, I need to get into the habit of the minute that I read it, take a screen capture of it, and then it would put them in an easier place for me to find. But sorry about that. Phone call. Okay. So where was I? I think, I was talking about the only two things I think that I had to talk about. Again, if I've missed something, please leave me another comment below. The first thing was a suggestion about carrying threads. And I thought this was a spectacular idea, and I wish I wrote down who said it, but I flipped quickly through the comments and I couldn't easily find it. So if this was your suggestion, thank you, because I think you're brilliant. She was talking about the pin stitch and how to carry threads, basically. If she had a whole bunch of stitches that were, only a few apart, she would do an individual pin stitch on each stitch, carry the thread, pin stitch, do the cross, carry the thread, pin stitch, do the cross, so on and so forth until she was done, and then she would flip it over and then cut the carried threads. And because she'd already done the pin stitch, they were secure, and she got rid of her carried threads. I thought that was so simple and so brilliant. So brilliant. So for those pieces where we've got a ton of confetti, like snowflakes and things like that, or, especially darker threads where we're carrying a long distance, I thought that was an excellent tip. So thank you to whoever wrote that in, because I thought that was spectacular. Now I wish I had your name to give you proper credit. So if that was you, leave me another comment and I will give you proper credit again on next week. I might even mention it again on Monday. Monday's going to be tricky. Monday might have to be a shorter video. I'm not sure I'm going to get to the mailbag section on Monday because it's a holiday here in Canada. It is the Victoria Day long weekend, or as we more affectionately call it, the May 2-4 weekend, even though it's usually not on the 24th, sometimes falls on this weekend. It's the third weekend of the month of May. It is our first holiday weekend of the summer season. It's when people know it's finally safe to go and plant things in their garden, and we call it the 2-4 is what we Canadians call a case of beer. So that is there are 24 beer in a case of beer, so it's known as a 2-4, and lots of people buy a 2-4 for the 2-4 weekend. So there you go, a little bit of Canadiana. at how pretty. So let's give that pin stitch tip. Let's give it a try. After I'm done these 4, I have to carry the thread across to do this matching square there. So when I carry the thread, I'm going to do, let's see, because I have to finish off the first thread. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me finish first. Talking before I'm ready to do it. I'm talking while I'm thinking, which is not usually a good idea. All right. I'm going to come the other way. This way. Oh, and you know what I'm doing? Look at that. I am stitching with my other hand. It is just such a habit. And because it's not hurting now, I'm doing it unconsciously because that tenderness is so faded that it's not enough of a reminder to make me stop. Okay, so flip it around. I'm going to end my thread there. Now I'm going to come up and I'm going to do a pin stitch from, I guess I'm going to do it from the back. I didn't think about this. Yeah, that makes sense. So 1, 2, how many? There are 3. 3 squares in between. So this is going to be, all right, so I've come up the pin stitch. I'm going to do this. How's that? That's pretty good. Okay, so I've come up. You can see we talked last week about how working on linen is like looking at a tic-tac-toe board. So I have come up in the middle right of my tic-tac-toe board. So one hole higher is the top right. One hole lower is the bottom right. Bottom middle, bottom left, left middle, left top, and so forth. So to do the pin stitch, you come up, this is how I do it. I come up in the middle right, down in the middle, the very middle hole of your tic-tac-toe board. Up in the middle, left, and back down in the middle. So you've basically done a little figure 8. And now that is in the very middle of where your X is going to be. And so now I'm going to come up in the top right, bottom left, and I'm going to cover up that little work there that I did with my pin stitch, and it's hidden and neat and tidy. Now let's go ahead and finish that square. Somebody's mowing their lawn outside. Actually, no, that was a truck. That was a truck. That's a weird truck noise. Anyways, didn't become more clear until it got closer. I love, the sound of lawn mowing never bothers me. It's such a, I don't know. I find it a bit comforting, really. Somebody's taking care of their lawn. Isn't that weird? I think that's a bit weird. Okay, so almost done my square. Now I'm going to leave my needle here so that I can get to the back of this and try out the tip of trimming the carried thread. So where are we? Where are we? There we go. Okay. So you can see I have not done the pin stitch for these places where I carried here. And really, if I wasn't trying to try this little technique, I would just be leaving this. Because as you can see, let me flip this again. As you can see, that spot is going to be covered by these blue stitches, and you're really not going to see that carried thread. However, I really wanted to try this out because I think it's a really great trick to use in the future. So this, because the pin stitch is there, that is now secure, and I'm really carefully going to come in. Oh, you can't see. There. Really going to come in carefully and snip. So, and you want to be really careful. Okay, so I probably shouldn't be trying to do this on video because knowing me, I'll goof up and snip my fabric or something. And then that would take another video to show you how I'd have to fix that. That would not be fun. Okay, so I'm going to clean this up. Well, what the heck, I'm here now. Let's do it. Let's be brave. There. A little bit more. So, if I didn't have the camera in my face, I probably would have used a pair of tweezers or something if I had them down here to pull up that little bit and trim it nice and close. But I think, there you go. There you have it. And it is secure. So, coming back to the front, we'll just finish off the rest of our square. There we go. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. There. Okay, so I think to end today, I had a question. I was just about to go with my left hand. Question from Kyle from a couple of weeks ago. And I did make note of it because I knew he'd ask if I didn't get to it. So let me read his question. Hang on a second. Oop, I had it. There we go. Okay. Besides a needle and scissors, what would you say are some of the most important tools every stitcher should have? And what is one tool that may not necessarily be essential, but you yourself need for stitching? I think that's a great question. So besides a needle and scissors, well, you need thread and you need fabric. Those are pretty essential. Needles and fabric, scissors, and thread. Those are the essentials. Everything else is extraneous. Everything else is not necessary. Those 4 things. If you have those 4 things, it doesn't matter. You can stitch, right? I mean, I think that's what I think. If I had nothing else, but if I had a piece of fabric, some thread, a needle, and a pair of scissors, I could stitch something. And you can guarantee I would stitch something. So now on to what do I like to use and consider essential for myself? That's a tough one. I don't really feel like anything that I have that I like to use is essential. I think it's a nicety. It's what makes it more pleasurable versus pleasurable. I think that's probably a good way to describe it, because I'd be pretty happy with just the 4 essentials. Fabric, thread, needle, scissors. I'd be pretty happy. I don't love stitching in hand. So I like using a frame. So I guess for me, I don't consider it essential though, because I have stitched in hand. I like stitching Mill Hill bead kits in hand, the perforated paper. I have stitched lots of smalls in hand, but I like using a frame. I like using scroll rods. They are my preference over Q snaps, as I've said. So I like scroll frames. But if I couldn't afford scroll frames, I would be just as happy with Q snap. I would just make it work. Oh, probably for me, the other essential would be a drink of some sort. When I sit down to stitch, I really like to have a cup of coffee or an herbal tea, something on. I have a, you can tell this is the spot where I like to sit all the time because the chairs, I mean, these are very inexpensive faux leather chairs. And clearly I sit here all the time. You can see this chairs, and everybody knows this is my chair. So my chair I have a coaster on the table beside me. And before I sit down to stitch, if that coaster is empty, it feels very strange, very strange. So I like to have, I also like to have an Ort collector near where I'm sitting. My one upstairs is a repurposed candy jar that says Prozac on it. That's what I use upstairs. And downstairs here, I have an old, it's not old, I mean, it's not an antique or anything, but there's an organic milk company in Ontario here that uses glass bottles, and you pay a deposit on them. I used to buy this not regularly, but as a treat, because I love milk products in glass bottles. They please me, but they're expensive. So it was kind of a once in a while treat. And twice I didn't return the bottles. I forfeited my deposit because I really wanted to keep them. And this is why. So there are my Orts in there. And so I do keep that beside me on my stitching spot. I also usually have some form of hand lotion. This is it's also a local Ontario product from Coldwater, which is not that far from here in London. This is a really nice one. It's really light. I use it more when I'm knitting than when I'm stitching, but that's why I keep a thing of hand cream down here, because mostly for my knitting. For stitching, I like to use a lotion bar and just in my cuticles with silk thread. Sometimes, especially in the dead of winter, nice to have some cuticles that are moisturized. Other than that, everything else is, I don't know, what else do I like? I like needle minders. I really like needle minders. I really like, I like grime guards, clearly. Those are handy. What else do I like? I don't know. I think that's about it. Everything else is just, part of your whip. It's your thread and your fabric. So I guess that's about it. A good light. Oh, yeah. Actually, I probably consider that fairly essential, is good light. But that can mean natural light. So wherever you're sitting. So yeah, let's add that to the list of 4. So now we have 5 things. Good lighting. Good lighting, and it can be natural. Natural light's usually the best light. But I have an artificial light in here, so non-essential, but definitely nice to have. It's one of those, what is it? I think it's an light on it's the floor one. I received it. It was what I asked for Christmas this year. And I provided a very specific link to the exact one that I wanted, and John came through. So again, not essential, but very nice to have. And I think that's about it. Great question, Kyle. Thank you. Okay, so I think I have to get back to work now. I have some piecing to do today for some bags that are going to be ready next week. Some shop models that are going to be ready next week. And so I am going to say goodbye now. I'm going to get this video exporting, importing, exporting, edited, so on and so forth. There's quite a number of steps involved to get this video out to you, but I'm going to have it loaded to go live at 6 p.m. because at 6 p.m. my behind is going to be back in this chair for the remainder of the evening. My family comes back late tomorrow night. They are going to start their day of travels first thing tomorrow morning, and they should be home. Actually, it'll be earlier than first thing tomorrow morning. It's probably in the middle of the night, and they'll be home by about midnight tomorrow night. So I'm really excited to see them again. It's been a wonderful break, wonderful vacation for an introvert. Very quiet, very peaceful. I've gotten a lot done, things that I wanted to do. I had a lot to do, but I did. I feel like I achieved what I set out to, and I'm really ready for them to come home now. So I will wish you a happy weekend, and I will see you on Monday for just a quick FlossTube update, because I have been doing some stitching this week and I have a few other things to share with you on Monday. So happy stitching, happy weekend.